Hello and welcome to our author chat this evening with Amy Mclellan. I'm going to let Amy introduce herself properly and show off the cover to her book, Remember Me. Hi, Amy.
Hi, my name's Amy Mclellan, and this is my debut novel published by Orion. It came out on April the 16th, and it's called Remember Me.
We've got lots and lots of questions. I'll just remind anybody watching that questions that are asked tonight or have been asked previously, Amy's going to choose 5 of her favourites and they're going to receive a book, a copy of Remember Me, which one of the questions really made me laugh. It was from Caroline Maston and it says, "Are you planning a restraining order for Samantha Brownley yet for stalking?"
No.
So hopefully the answer to that's no.
No, not yet.
So one of our members shared a review of Remember Me, and the review was so good, the 5-star review. I decided I stopped what I was doing, bought it, read it, and then obviously hunted you down on social media because I wanted an interview with you, which is why Kaz thinks I'm stalking you. But it was so good. Yeah, of course. You've had some great reviews. What does it feel like when you start to receive these 5-star reviews for your debut?
I have to say, at the beginning, I didn't dare look. I didn't dare look, and so when I did look, I was quite pleasantly surprised actually, and some of them were really they really touched me actually because I felt like people got the character because I think she's quite a complicated character.
Yeah.
And I think people got her, which I was really pleased with because she really invaded my head for quite a long time, and so I'm glad that people, sort of struck a chord with her. So I'm pleased about that.
Yeah, she is a fascinating character. How hard is it to before I dive in with my 1,000 questions, let's take some of the ones from the members. Pat Adams, right? Hi, Pat. Amy, how much preparation did you give to the first chapter of your book?
Hi, Pat. That's a good one. I think the first chapter is always quite a hard one to do because you know that's your first impression.
Yeah.
And I found it quite hard to do because it's also quite a violent chapter. That chapter, I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
And I found that quite hard to do because I've never been in a fight. And I found that quite hard to write. And I also wanted to give clues. The main character suffers with face blindness, which means she can't recognize faces. And I wanted to give clues to the reader that she had this condition, but without giving too much away straight away. I wanted to leave the reader sort of guessing about what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so when the first chapter opens, she and her sister are watching TV. And I wanted to try and give a sense that the main character is a bit of a bookworm, which is a bit like me, because when she's watching TV, it makes no sense to her because she can't recognise the faces, so she never really recognises the characters. And I found that took me quite a while to write, to get that sense of what watching TV would be like when you can't recognise faces and characters, and how irritating that was probably for the other person in the room when there's someone sitting there going, "Who's that again? Who are they? Have we seen them before?" And that also sort of sets up the relationship with her sister. So yeah, I spent quite a bit of time on the first chapter.
Yeah. Caroline Maston has asked, "You've travelled a lot. Which country that you visited was the most inspiring to your writing?"
Okay. Yeah, so in my other hat, I'm a journalist and I've written a long time about the oil and gas industry. And so I used to travel quite a lot, helicoptering out to rigs and traveling around the world. I don't do it anymore, more desk-based now, I just work from home. Yeah, so I went to some really interesting places, and I have to say, going up to the Arctic Circle in Canada, and then also up in Norway as well. They're places that I have to say I did actually start just before Christmas writing a book, which is based around a press tour in those kind of really wild, frozen, remote places. It's sort of a press tour that goes wrong, and horrible things happen to all the various people on the trip. So I guess you could say that that did sort of inspire me, those landscapes and the kinds of characters that you meet in these really wild, extreme places.
Yeah. Jason Kelly, another one of our admins, hi Jason, has asked, will the lead character in book 2 have some sort of illness or condition?
That's a really good question. I did have an idea for another book based around another brain condition. And at the time when I have loads of ones that I start, and I did think, oh, this would be great because this is a really good brain condition and you could really set it up really well. It's about somebody who, you can have a brain injury, a left-right brain, where you don't know what the other side of the brain is doing. And I had this whole plot worked out in my head, and I actually started writing it. And then after a while, I thought, actually, I don't know if I want to be known as the writer who has a very, very specific niche of just writing about people with various brain conditions that makes them unreliable narrators. So I actually stopped that one, but I might circle back to it at some point in the future. So no, next one won't.
Not at the moment. Is there anywhere in the world that you haven't been that you would like to visit? And that's Kaz again.
Oh yeah, loads of places. Yeah, and at the moment, with us sort of all being in lockdown and not able to travel, does make me feel a bit, oh, will I ever get to go now? But one place I've always wanted to go and I've never been is Venice, and I do see now apparently it's the perfect time to visit. Apparently the waters are all clear and there are no
I've seen
tourists.
pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, it does look really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been to Venice and I would love to see it.
Yeah. We have got some questions coming in at the side as well, which we'll get to shortly. Can I just ask that any members that are writing a question for us, can you please put your name at the end of it, because we just get it up as Facebook user. Don't know why, but we'd love to know who's asking questions, especially if you're one of the winners. Your name would be helpful. We've got a question from Caroline Maston again. Which writers are the most influential to you? Good question.
Gosh, I've always loved spy books, so I have to say I've always loved John le Carre and Graham Greene and all that kind of vein of books. I've always loved spy books, so I love those. I also really enjoy. I've just finished reading back to back the Hilary Mantel trilogy of the Thomas Cromwell, which I've really enjoyed. I've just loved how she's brought to life this character who's, he lived 500 years ago, but he feels so real. So I love those. I wouldn't necessarily say they're influential. They don't sort of necessarily in this sort of genre that I'm writing in, but I do just really admire what they've done in the way they make their characters really come to life. So I love reading those books. And in crime, oh gosh, just so many. I'm actually reading Agatha Christie at the moment with my daughter, and we're reading one that I've not read before, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and I'm just in awe of how she drops her little clues and things. So I'm puzzling over who's doing what at the moment in that. So yeah, I read lots of different genres. I don't just stick to crime, although obviously I love crime.
Of course.
Yeah.
I've got to say, actually, you did that really well in Remember Me. The dropping the clues and the confusion, and you're never quite sure.
Oh,
And I find I'm quite hard to surprise usually, and you really surprised me.
Oh, thank you.
So it is. I've been gushing about the book, well, since I read it. So
Oh,
I think
thank you.
anyone who knows me who hasn't got a copy, then they've not been listening hard enough.
That's lovely. Well, thank you. We have to put you on commission.
We've got another question from Jason Keller. If somebody hasn't read your book before, how would you sell it to that person?
Ooh,
That is
oh
a good
gosh, that's
question.
so hard to do.
Yeah,
And they always say, don't they, as well, when you're thinking of writing a book, that you should always, before you start, you should work out first of all, how do you say it in 2 sentences, because then
yeah,
you've got something that you can sell. And I would say mine would be a lady with face blindness witnesses a crime. She can't identify the killer because she can't recognize faces, but
hmm,
she has to find the killer because she's in the frame. She's been framed for the murder. So she has to try and find the killer, even though she never knows who she's speaking to is actually who they say they are. And she lives in this very paranoid, suspicious, isolated world.
yeah. It is really hard to describe your book without giving anything away. I've been I'm very cautious now of, I can't really talk about any of the characters for fear of the wrong thing coming out my mouth.
Yeah, I
So,
know. Yeah,
yeah, it's
I know. It was
it is
very
tricky to
strange
sell.
because I did quite a lot of research into the condition that she's got,
Hmm.
and one of the things that I found is that she was so in my head, and I was so determined to try and capture what it must be like to have face blindness,
Yeah.
that afterwards, when I was reading other books, so I think straight away afterwards, I read the book about uh, Facebook, the friend request, and I
Mm.
was reading that, and in it the character goes to meet somebody, and I was thinking, how does she know that's who he says he is, because she can't recognize his face? And then I had to think to myself, not all characters have face blindness. And I got so used into trying to make myself think like that,
Yeah.
that I found I was projecting it onto other books I was reading. So it was quite interesting.
We've got one of Caroline's favourite questions. Would you like to make a graphic novel adaptation of your work?
Oh, I love that actually, because I think it's a really underrated literary form
Absolutely.
actually. And
Yeah.
my husband actually used to write and publish graphic novels, and yeah, so we have a lot of that kind of artwork around here. I would love it actually, because I would really love to see how an artist would represent face blindness on the page.
Yeah, of course.
How would you show that? I would absolutely love to see how another creative would approach that. And in my mind, you always have this thing, oh, what if it was made into TV? I was thinking,
Yeah.
God, how would they do it though? How would you ever show that the person she's looking at, she just really
Oh,
doesn't
of
recognize the
course.
face? So
Yeah.
it's I would love to see how an artist in a graphic novel
Yeah.
would tackle that. I'd be really intrigued.
So you've got me thinking now. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's that ever since I saw that question, it's had me thinking actually, because I would love to see what an artist would do. Yeah.
We've got another one from Caroline Maston. What challenges are there to being a debut author during lockdown?
Oh,
To faced a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah, it's I'm not alone, because I know April was going to be a big month for just for people publishing crime books. Never
Yeah.
mind all the other genres that come out. April was going to be a big month, and obviously everything was cancelled.
Yeah.
My editor was furloughed just days before my book came out.
Wow.
All the publicity and everything was just cancelled, and I also felt quite you're watching the news, you're seeing people dying, grieving, people are losing their jobs, and it felt really I felt it was sort of inappropriate to be going, look at me, look at my book.
Yeah.
So although I did some activity around the launch, It was really bittersweet, and I
Yeah.
felt quite awkward doing it. And and that's just such a minor thing in the context of what's going on in our world at the moment.
But it was a big thing for you. You write your debut novel, you're excited, you've poured your heart and soul into it.
Oh, it's been a childhood dream. I mean, I have to say, absolute childhood dream, always to get a book published.
Mm,
And although this is my debut one, over the years I've written about 6 full-length novels
yeah.
and never got one quite over the line to get published before. And so I was so excited at long last. At the age of 46, I finally got there, and yeah, everything was shut down.
Oh,
So I have to say it was a really bittersweet day.
yeah, of
I had a few
course.
drinks, and I had my my children and my husband and the cat here, and but it was quite a bittersweet day
Yeah.
in itself. But it's still out there, and books don't have a shelf life, so I can continue promoting
Yeah,
them and
lucky for
selling them.
you. It's such a terrific book that word of mouth is obviously,
Oh,
it's got people reading it just because people have enjoyed it so much that they want to tell people. So I
oh,
hope you take some comfort in that at least.
oh, thank you. And it was out in Italy as well, actually. I
Wow.
think in May. I think it was
Mm,
last week it came out in Italy, and that was just lovely to see as well.
mm.
To see copies of it in Italian, it was really, really lovely to see. So I got quite excited about that.
Yeah, I bet you did. Do you think you'll have some sort of launch once lockdown's lifted? Some sort of
I,
celebration or?
Yes, I was talking about doing something in September.
Hmm.
We've got an amazing bookshop here in Shropshire, Booker Bookshop. It's absolutely amazing in Oswestry. I was going to hopefully do an event there in September.
Mm,
Um, Obviously, it's really it's very hard to plan the future at the
of
moment. So I'm
course.
hoping things are more back
Yeah.
to normal in September, but um, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Fingers crossed.
I know, I know.
Oh, question from Jason Kelly. When you completed Remember Me, who was the first person to read it all through?
Oh, probably my agent
Mhm.
and my editor. I wrote it to quite a tight deadline. So I basically, once I finished it, I just sent it straight off to my agent and editor. I think my agent probably read it first, but quite hot on the heels. I had the comments from the editor as well. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, that was the
You
first
you did
feedback.
have an unusual situation when it came to writing your book. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, we when we had the idea for it, and I worked out a whole chapter by chapter structure for it, and
Mhm.
written the first 3 chapters. And so once we signed the contract and said, yeah, let's go ahead, and we're going to do this, they then turned around and said we'd like it in a really short time frame, which I can't remember, was about 4 months
Mm,
from when we did the contract to actually having to get it to them. And it felt like quite a blur those months. I have to say, I set myself like a daily word tally,
mhm.
and just I've got to sit down, I've got to write this, otherwise I'll never get it to them in
Yeah.
time. So it did feel like quite a blur, and then I sent it over to them. I thought, phew, that's done. It's going to take them a little while to read it,
Mhm.
and so I'll have a bit of a breather, and then they'll send me back, and I'll do the edits. But my editor at Orion, Francesca Pafak, is so professional. So
Mm,
she got it, she read it, and I couldn't believe it. We'd gone on holiday, and I was thinking, oh God, I really need this break because I've just been like
mhm.
working, no sleep, and she sent back the notes almost straight away. She's just such a professional, hardworking person. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness! So then, as soon as she got back, it was straight into doing the edits. And again, there wasn't much time to do those either. So it did feel it was quite
Yeah.
quite
Quite
an
fast.
intensive process.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got another question from Jason Kelly, which says, did you have the whole book planned out before you got the deal with Orion? Which you've just covered some of that. So
Yeah,
you had a chapter by chapter breakdown.
yeah, I do like to know where I'm going with a book. I know some people will just fly and just see where it takes them. I went to a great talk where Shari Lapina was talking about how she works, and she never has a plan, and she never knows in her own head where it's going to go or what's going to happen. But my brain doesn't work like that. I like to have a chapter by chapter, what's going to happen in each chapter, and try and make sure something moves forward in each chapter. And so yeah, I had everything plotted out. And although I did deviate in places, because I think you do, sometimes characters get a bit of a life of their own, or you come up with a new idea and you think, oh, if I just slip this little red herring in here, or I'm going to play with this timeline a little bit. So you do deviate a little bit, but I always knew where I wanted it to go and how it was going to end, and roughly, you know, what was happening when. So yeah, it's probably my personality.
We've got a question from Pat Adams Wright. It says, Amy, are you inspired by any historical figures, writers or otherwise?
Ooh, that's a good one. That is a good
Tricky
one.
to be put on the spot.
Well, I'd say, having just read the Hilary Mantel book, having read Thomas Cromwell,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, inspired by him, because he did get a lot of people murdered, but equally just what he achieved, you know, working his way up from son of a blacksmith to like one of the most powerful people in the kingdom after King Henry VIII. I think that kind of drive and getting stuff done, I do quite admire that. You know, people who can do that. So yeah, I thought that's quite an inspiring story. And what other writers do I really enjoy? I love the Kate Atkinson books. I love what she's done with her writing, and the way that she's got the, you know, things life after life, and then she's also got the detective story as well. I just think it's so interesting to be able to do two different styles, two different genres, and to do them both so well. I think that's really inspiring.
Got another one from Jason Keller. Will we see any characters from Remember Me in book 2?
No.
So it's a standalone.
Yeah, a standalone. And I don't know how much more you could do with the characters. Yeah, I feel she's lived her adventure, and yeah, let her carry on quietly. She had enough trauma, I think, in her life so far.
There is somebody that I think would make a, well, in fact, telling the different stories of some of the characters. I mean, you've got such complex characters with such unusual and interesting lives. I think you probably could do that, but obviously, you're happy it's done and the stories have been told.
Yeah, I could maybe at some point in the future, but yeah, in my head, it was very much a sort of standalone story.
Yeah,
Yes, I mean they, you know, I'm glad you connected with the characters, because they, you
yeah,
know, some of them, even the really irritating ones, you know, I was very fond of as
yeah,
well. Yeah, and Sarah, the main character, she yeah, she can be really difficult. She's not always a very nice person at all. But I grew, you know, very fond of her. I always felt she's trying to be a better person
yeah.
than
I'd agree
perhaps
with
her
that. Yeah,
instincts would lead her to be. She's always trying to be a better person, and you know, I quite like that. I think we're all a bit like that every day,
yeah, of course.
trying to be a bit better, particularly at the moment, trying to do a job and 3 kids at home. I'm
Yeah,
trying to be a better person and
yeah.
rise above it.
We've got a question from Jason Kelly. You did hint at this before, but how much research did you do on prosopagnosia?
Oh good work there. Good work. I noticed what you did there with.
Only because you helped me. We practiced before our little shoot for our promo video, so
Yeah,
so I
I have to
knew.
say,
I do
I think
wonder
that's
if
quite a
Jason's thrown that in, so I'll have to say it on
yeah.
live. So thanks, Jay. So how much research did you do? It must have taken a
I
long time.
Yeah, I did. I read a lot of sort of medical case studies of people who had it. Some people are born with it. Some people get it, like my
Okay.
character, as a result of trauma. Um, I read because she'd had a brain injury. I also read quite a lot around people who have brain injury and rehabilitation, because she does have quite a long rehabilitation process. So I did
Yeah.
research that a lot. And then also, once I told people what I was doing, I spoke to so many people who either had it or someone in their family have got it, or as I was talking to them would say, I think I have it. And apparently,
Well,
about 1 in 50 people do have it to some degree, which is, to me, is that's quite a high number of
yeah,
people.
that's quite staggering.
Yeah, and they say that I think if you're born with it, you might not necessarily know you've got it, because you could just think that everybody's like that. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's not until somebody reads about it or meets someone who talks to them about it that they realize, oh, the reason I feel socially awkward or I have trouble engaging with people, they realize that perhaps all this time it's actually been that they've had a problem processing faces, and
mm,
so they don't recognize people. So it is it can be on a spectrum. You can have it quite mildly. My character obviously has it very severely.
yeah,
Um, she really struggles. She can't even recognize close family, or even her own reflection. So there is a spectrum.
yeah. And her sister wears, oh well, the way you describe them, quite ugly cardigans that help her stand
Yeah,
out in a crowd to be recognised.
yeah, the really flamboyant cardigan pom-poms and things on to try and so she can be recognised. Because I did read some quite heartbreaking stories, really, of people who, although in many ways, they always say, don't, you know, we're not helpless in this situation. We have
Mm,
coping strategies to be able to go through life and recognise people. So we rely on people having certain hairstyle or your height or any other uh, distinguishing characteristic to recognize people. um, but there are times when it's quite heartbreaking where they can be perhaps sitting in the audience of a school play and they can't pick out their own child because the children are all in school uniform and look the
yeah,
same. And it's the kind of thing that I can imagine uh, must be very difficult sometimes if you
yeah,
can't recognize close family. I think we forget as well how much, we how important faces are,
yeah,
um, in terms of our ability to connect to people and recognize people.
yeah,
And I know I've been in situations at events where I've been there and I can't always, someone's speaking to me and I know they know me and I can't recognize them and I can't place them.
yeah,
And that horrible feeling of panic you get that you're being rude and you're frantically trying to think, who is this person? Where do I know you from? And I, people who have face blindness are obviously living with that every day. They go out and encounter people. So
yeah,
um, as with my character, it can lead to other social anxiety disorders, isolating yourself because you become wary of giving offence or upsetting people or getting into awkward encounters.
yeah. We go back to some of the questions. Caroline's asked, "Who did you dedicate Remember Me to?"
That's to my husband Adam. Yeah, and we've been together. We met when we were 18 and 19, and been together for a very long time. And we've supported one another a long way because he's also a writer, and so he writes action thrillers, and he also does screenwriting. and we supported one another for so many years on our various creative endeavours. And yeah, it's been a long journey. I know he has written publicly before, you know, about how we've been through some hard times because it's not always been very financially secure. And so yeah, I dedicated the book to him because he's always been a, you know, great support all the way through. Because it's one of those, I think anybody in the group who's writer or planning to be a writer will know it's a real highs and lows, and you feel very exposed, and everybody gets rejections, and it, you know, it can cut you quite deeply. So I think you know, that persistence to keep on going, we've sort of always been there to sort of cheer the other one on. So yeah,
that's really lovely. Somebody who's definitely earned his dedication in the book.
he has, yeah.
We've got, I was going to say we've got a question from Amy Mclellan, but it's not, it's a comment you put on the group.
I thought you had some great questions, yeah.
Pauline Render Byron has asked, if you could co-write a book with any author, living or deceased, who would you choose? Wow,
Yeah,
that's quite a big question.
Yeah. Ooh, you'd want to pick someone successful, wouldn't you? Maybe a J.K. Rowling, because she knows she's never going to need a partner, is she? um, I think deceased. I'd be really interested to see how Charles Dickens maybe wrote, because I know he was really disciplined, and he really, you know, he had a huge fan base while he was alive, and he really connected with so many people. So I think it'd be quite interesting to see how he did that, you know, pushing out chapters every day to get them out to the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be quite interesting.
I think he'd be quite surprised by the changes in marketing and things these days.
Yes, I know.
Quite different to sell books back when, you know, there wasn't the whole machine.
I know.
Wow.
And also at a time when most people couldn't afford books. You know,
Yeah.
just a completely different different way of publishing, and it could, you know, you know, he wrote books that everybody could enjoy, but probably most people couldn't afford, which is why, you know, they'd be serialized in newspapers, you know, for people to follow. So yeah, really, really different.
Really different, yeah. We've got another question from Pauline Render Byron. What was the first thing you did after signing your deal?
I may have had a few drinks, I think. And then probably started writing quite quickly when I realised how soon they needed the book turned around.
We've got lots and lots of questions at the side. So let's start with these. Would you and your husband ever consider writing together?
Oh, we have.
You have?
Yeah, we have. We just haven't
How did
found
that go?
we haven't found a publisher for it yet. But it's an absolutely brilliant, I think, brilliant book with an amazing female character who's a journalist who's she's battled her way back from she had a total mental breakdown, and she lost everything in her life, and she's battling her way back, and she's got really interesting, difficult backstory, but she gets involved in this amazing adventure about people who are illegally testing weapons, and it's a real exciting story, but we just haven't found a publisher for it yet. But we're still going with that one, actually, because we think it's really relevant, and actually since we wrote it together it's only become more relevant.
Yeah.
At the time people said to us, oh, I don't think this, because she publishes her news, she's a journalist, and she publishes it on a news blog. And quite a number of publishers said to us, oh, we don't think this blogging will take off.
How wrong they were.
I know.
It's funny actually. That's how we've only recently started to do live videos on the book club, and it started when David Gilchrist found out that Harrogate had been cancelled this year, and he said, "I think we should do this," and handed it over to Caroline. So Kaz has been the driving force behind a lot of it, and it just shows how much the world can be, run differently.
Yes, yeah.
I think,
And I do think, if we're all in our homes, we still want to connect with other people, don't we? And, we want to see faces and hear what people, have to say. I used to love going to the local bookshops in the area, would run live events where you could see authors talking. And I used to love, I learned so much from listening to what other authors had to say.
yeah,
I think this is definitely such a valuable forum, isn't it, to get together and see people and talk to them.
stock your new favourites.
Yeah.
We have got lots of questions. Somebody who's just come up as Facebook user has put, "What question do I need to ask to win a book?" A better one than that. That's very cheeky.
Yeah.
Kaz wants to know which graphic novels your husband writes
Oh,
or wrote.
yeah. So his name is Adam Hamdy, and he wrote a series called The Hunter, which I think was four in the series. And then there was another series which I think was Star Maker, um, and that was really good as well. And he worked with the artist David Golding, who's a brilliant artist. So yeah, it was. Yeah, we lived for a while with piles of sort of comics everywhere, and the art was everywhere. It was really good. But yeah, I do think that was such a good. I would love to see Remember Me as a graphic novel. I'd love to see how an artist would approach that.
We've got a question from Facebook user which says, "Which festival are you looking forward to the most?" So, do you plan to attend some of the crime festivals?
Well, last year I went to Harrogate,
Mm-hmm.
which I loved, which is the first one I'd ever been to, which was was amazing. And then my husband, Adam, is the co-founder of Capital Crime, which
Oh, okay.
was in London. Yeah. So I went to this Capital Crime, which was brilliant, I have to say that. And then there's another writer I know, Kaz Finley, who is setting one up in Liverpool, Perfect Crime. And I can't remember. I've got a feeling I can't go to that one because that is my son's birthday. That sort of slightly was on my wish list as well.
Yeah.
Are there any that you'd recommend? Because
I
I've
haven't
only done.
actually been to one yet. I
Ah,
always hear great things about Harrogate.
yes.
We hear wonderful things about Edinburgh. So there's,
Oh,
well, you can literally, I think, point at a map and find one.
yeah.
So I think you've got a lot to choose from. But that's a good question for our members. I know lots of them have visited lots of different festivals. So
Mm.
we, so a question just popped up in the corner. Would Adam be Adam Hamdy, which is what you've just
Yeah.
said? He is.
Yes, it is.
So
Yeah.
I don't know who that is though. It just says Facebook user. So
Facebook user.
feel free to type your names with your questions. Oh, we're hearing that Morecambe and Vice is a nice festival.
Oh, right.
I like the name of your friend's festival. Perfect Crime's really good. It's
Yes,
a great
yes.
name.
It is a good name. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Most authors write on laptops or computers. Would you ever write a book manually? Do you do any handwritten notes or do you just type?
No, no, I have actually written most of it by hand, and then I go and type it up. Um, Over the years of writing and having children and a job,
Yeah.
um, basically just write wherever I can. So
A few snatched minutes here and there.
yeah, I know, at the side of ice rinks, football matches, soft play, you know, everywhere, in car parks. Yeah, I've written
Anywhere
longhand.
and everywhere.
Yeah, and because I'm a journalist, my writing is awful because it's half shorthand, half written, and so it's a horrible mess that nobody else could ever make sense of. And I have to type it up quite quickly afterwards because even I can't read it. If I were to leave it too many days before I go back and type it up, even I wouldn't be able to read it. So, but I do find that's quite a useful way to work, because in the process of typing it up, you're also sort of self-editing as well as you go along. So, yeah, it's that's my messy way of working.
Oh, we've got lots and lots of questions. As I'm scrolling up, it's hitting more and more. Facebook user, so if you can tell us your name, I don't know who it is. If Remember Me got adapted for TV, who would you like to see play the lead characters?
Oh my goodness, that's a good one. I don't know. I'm not very good on actresses. I don't know who I would say. I don't know who I'd imagine. So the main character's my age, so she's 46. So she'd be, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what actresses would be in that. I don't know.
I always think it's such a hard question because your character is your character. So choosing somebody that you think would be able to play them well must be such a tough idea now. It's tricky because
Yeah.
even I can't think who I'd like to play Sarah.
No, I always think casting agents do an amazing job because
Yeah.
it's quite hard to find the right person for a role. And there's nothing worse than when you watch a TV or film and it's based on a character that you love and you just think they're wrong for the role, they're wrong, it's the wrong person. So I think when a casting agent can get that right, it's a really, you know, it's a real talent to be able to do that, to just, you know, get the right person in the right role.
Yeah, I mean, she generally plays a blonde, but Claire Danes. I love Claire Danes in anything. She's
From Homeland, yeah.
yeah, she's
Yeah,
so versatile in what she does. So there you
yeah.
go. There's my answer.
Oh,
Mainly
good.
because she's my favorite actress. So it's
Yeah. No,
she was the first one that came to mind.
yeah.
We've got a question that I think could be Jason Kelly. It has just come up as Facebook user. Do you listen to music while you're writing? If you do, what's your music of choice?
No, I don't tend to, just because I end up writing anywhere really, and I do find I can be quite easily distracted. So whereas Adam, my husband, he can't write unless he's got his soundtrack sorted out. And so for every book that he writes, it will have its own soundtrack, and he'll listen to that music again and again as he's writing that book. But I can write to silence, I can write with the radio on, I can write with the sound of, you know, soft play going on around me. I'm
You've
not.
got used to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's that one of those mom tricks, isn't it? You can
Yeah,
just zone
zoning
out
out
of
and
the
zoning
world.
back in.
Yeah.
Do you choose your book titles? So, did you choose the one for Remember Me?
No, I didn't. The publisher did. And it's interesting actually, having seen the Italian one, because they've given it a different title. They've called it The Face of the Killer. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so no, it's interesting. And it's got a completely different cover there as well. So no, I didn't pick that.
do you have a copy of it at home that we could look at, or
No, I'm
not
desperate to
got
see a
one?
copy. Yeah, no, I'd love to see the Italian one. But no, I
Mm.
haven't. No, apparently I will be getting some sent, but not yet.
Oh. Do you speak any other languages?
I speak really bad French.
Probably not as bad as my French.
No, it's bad.
I only know one phrase as far as I can remember, and it's a Lady Marmalade song. So I won't ask you.
Yeah, okay.
We we talked a little bit about your next book. Well, you know, your plan. How's that going? Have you got far yet, or?
No, well, I started the one in the Arctic, and I was quite excited about it. It was going well, and then I had another idea, which I it sort of overwhelmed me, and I wanted to start that. So I was making quite good progress on that, actually, by hand, writing it all out. And then suddenly we were into this crisis, and the children were off school, and I was
Yeah.
juggling work, so distracted by the news. So I have to say my writing has sort of, it's just not happening at the moment.
I think
I'm
that's the
hoping to
same
get
for a
it
lot of
back.
people.
Mm,
It's impossible when
yeah,
you've got 3 children in the house and a
I
husband
know.
who, you know, is also doing things at home, and
Yeah, I know. And I did think, because I'm a freelance journalist, I did think my work would probably disappear. But actually, I'm quite busy at the moment, so that's keeping me quite busy as well. So
yeah,
at the moment, I'm not, but it's still all percolating in the back, and I know it will come back. I've always written throughout my life, so I know I'll get back into it.
yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Just unusual times at the moment, so it's. I think it's okay for us all to be a bit not quite where we want to be at the moment.
Yeah, I know. I think we've all
Yeah,
got to be quite kind to ourselves. You know, we're sort of living through
absolutely.
history, aren't we? And we don't really know where this is going, and you know what life's going to look like. So I
Yeah,
think it's all right to, you know, not be performing at 100% all the time. It's okay.
yeah. You can't be all things to all men, as they
No,
say.
no.
We've got Jason Kelly is one of our admins, and
Uh-huh.
he's asked, "Can you get Adam to join UKCBC?"
You, yes, yes. I will. He knows
Nothing
nothing
like a bit of
about
cheek, Jason.
Facebook at all. Yes, I will get him to do it. And he'd probably actually love to do one of these as well.
We'd love to have
Um,
him.
yeah.
I'm guessing with the graphic novel element that Kaz would be the one who would think she'd fight us
Yeah.
for it. So
Oh, yeah.
there you go. So you can let him know that Caroline's awaiting his
Oh,
message.
oh no,
She'd
no,
love
he'd love
that.
to. Yeah, I will tell him, and I will try and get him to. He's not really a Facebook person, but I will get him to navigate his way on.
There you go, Jason. We'll have a go.
Yeah.
Um. Oh, sorry. I was just looking at Jason's said that he was the one who asked the Adam question. So thank you for that, Jason. So we've got about 10 minutes left.
Gosh, that's gone quickly.
It's gone really quick.
Wow.
So I've got a couple of questions myself as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, any more from the members, please keep them coming. Oh, sorry, my screen went funny then. So what have you been managing to read much yourself at the moment?
Um, I am reading. Yes. Yeah. So
So you mentioned John le Carré and you mentioned the Agatha Christie book. Do
yeah.
you often go for older, more?
No, I read a lot of the contemporary ones as well. So I recently read Fiona Cummings has written a new one, When I Was 10, which was, I just couldn't put it down. I was just blistered through that in a couple of days. It was a really disturbing read, which I really enjoyed. I also read Joe Furness has got a new book coming out. I think it's this summer, and it's she used to live in the same town as
She's
us.
actually coming for an author chat really soon.
Well,
She is.
yes, well, she her book is set in the area where we live. So I read a copy of it. It was really good, and she really yeah, I really thought, gosh, yeah, I recognize all these landmarks, so it was really, you know, really exciting to read. It was a really good story. But she's moved away now. Yeah, it was nice to have another author in town.
We've
So yeah, I do read a lot of contemporary crime as well. And then last year for Capital Crime, I had to read 20 debut novels to set
Wow.
questions. They had a quiz for all the debut novelists that were coming out last year. So I read 20 debut novels and they were all amazing. And it was quite dispiriting as someone who's had a debut coming out the next year, because I did just think I can never compete with any of these. These are all so good. And there's some really great names to watch. They're really good books. One of them is Leslie Cara, The Rumour, which was a great read. What else? The Confessions of Franny Langton, which I think won the Costa New Book Award by Sara Collins. That was a great read. Yeah, there's some really, really good books to read.
We've got a comment about Capital Crime, actually. I loved your quiz at Capital Crime, so much
That's what I
fun.
read all books for, yeah.
Do you plan to do it again at the next festival? And that is Anya.
Oh, Anya. Yes, I think they would want to do that again, as it was such a good quiz. And I thought it was really nice for all those debut novelists to get a fun way to talk about their books.
Yeah.
So other people read their books and then they all had to answer questions on the other people's books. And so it was just a really fun way of them to talk about their books without talking about their books.
Yeah, of course.
So that was really, really good fun. Yeah.
Jason's asked, is Mclellan your maiden name?
Yes, yeah. I've always kept my own name. Yeah, yeah. So I've never been a Hamdy. I've always been a McLellan.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, well, it is your name.
It is. I know.
It is.
I know. I always, Mrs. Hamdy is Adam's mum, so it's not. I've always been McLellan. Yeah.
Jason's also said he likes the lamp that's behind you.
Oh, thank you.
Jason has asked, first, second, or third person points of view, which do you prefer?
Ooh, that's really
Tricky one.
interesting. When I'm reading a book, sometimes I really, really enjoy the third person. And when I used to write, the books I wrote before Remember Me were all third person. And so it was the first time I'd ever written a first person book.
Yeah.
And I did like writing that way. It did make it really easy to convey like what it was like to be in her head and how mixed up it was and how she doesn't really know what's going on. So I actually really enjoyed writing that way. And when I'm reading myself, I like both. I do like both styles. But yeah, it was the first time I'd ever written first person. But I did wonder how I would deal with it, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed writing like that. So yeah, may return to it. Yeah.
So when you started writing Remember Me, I know you said you did detailed chapter plot,
Yeah.
plotting, but how did you decide what you would, what order things would go in and how you would,
Yeah.
how did you decide how to write it?
I did. That took quite a bit of time actually, because it jumps forwards and backwards in time, and I did find I had to spend quite a bit of time getting that right. And particularly, there's a child in the story who's aging as well, and I did find sometimes if I was changing the time because I thought, oh, that didn't quite work, that wouldn't happen quite so quickly, and then I'd realised, oh, that changes how old he is. So then the toys I've got him playing with aren't appropriate. And so it did take me quite a bit of time to work out how to structure that and to make the timelines work. And I did feel, though, that there was no other way to tell her story, because I felt if I didn't show the bits from her past,
Yeah,
you would never fully get the picture of who she was and why she was like
yeah,
the way she was. And
yeah, I absolutely agree. You needed
yeah,
all of the detail. when it came to the detail, obviously you're saying that you were writing different ages of the child in the book, James. So how did you go about? Did you have to do any research to see what would have been the toy at the time?
I think he's playing with Lego, so I knew I was on safe ground. It's been around for a long time. But there were different things when going back in time. I did think, is this appropriate? Would this happen then? And I have to say, there were quite a few times after I'd sent it all off and it was with the publisher, there was quite a few times where I would wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat thinking, oh, I changed that timeline. Did I check that? Is that right? And oh, that happened to me so many times. This horrible fear of, I've got that wrong. I know that's not right. And I kept doing that. It took a while for that to settle down. I think because it had been such a process of trying to get the timelines right and what happens when and who knows what when.
Yeah. We've got a question from a Facebook user that says, would you like to write something that's set in another country? If so, what country would you choose?
Well, as I was saying, I was writing one set in the Arctic, and I was
Yeah.
going to have it sort of set off the coast of Alaska, actually. So I did start that.
Do you think you go back to that?
I think I would, because it does keep coming back to me. The story, it's one of those ones, and every time I read a story about the Arctic or see a photo about it, I think, oh, I must get back on that. So yes, I will go back to it because I thought it was quite a strong idea, and yeah, I'd like to go back to it.
Amy, would you like to be part of a future online festival? And that's from David Gilchrist, who is the founder of our lovely UK Crime Book Club. So would you like to be part of a future online festival with us?
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
It's all right, I'm sure I'll find you. Be fine.
Yeah.
Hunt you down. We are now coming up towards 8 o'clock, so would you like to give us a final recap of and show off your book cover so people know what they're looking for?
So this is Remember Me, and it's it came. Sorry,
There you go.
Angling it. I don't know if you have that. Oh, that's better.
Yeah, stay still. Yep.
Yeah, and it's published by Orion, and obviously available on Amazon and Hive, and independent bookshops can order it for you as well. And it's been a pleasure to write, and it's just so lovely that you sought me out to ask me questions about it. I'm really touched and honoured. I really am. So thank you.
Well, thank you for not ringing the police. Caroline, I'm going to leave this as the final comment. Caroline Maston has said, Samantha is your official stalker.
Oh. So... Do I get to send you a badge? Do you wear a badge?
Absolutely. I would wear a badge for you, yeah. Official stalker. That might raise some eyebrows, but yeah, I don't think my family would be that surprised if I walked around with that badge on. All I do is talk about the group and the admins who've become really good friends and all of the authors. It's genuinely made my lockdown, reading your book and getting you within such a short space of time. I was thrilled. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Honestly, it's absolutely my honour. So thank you so much. It really is. Thank you.
And thank you to all of the members and the admins for joining us as well tonight. It's been really interesting hearing the answers to everybody's questions.
Yeah, amazing questions as well.
Yeah. So I will send all of these over to you and you can pick your 5 favourites. So good luck, everyone.
Yes, good
Thank
luck.
you
Thank
so
you so
much
much.
again.
No,
Bye.
thank you. Bye.